Welcome to Sober Solutions. We are a weekly recovery podcast not affiliated with any particular 12-step or recovery program. However, you may hear us mention them. My name is Jason, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Chris, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Ben. I'm an alcoholic and addict.
And welcome back to Sober Solutions. This is episode 7. Tonight we're going to be talking about relationships. And in fact, relationships is such a broad topic that over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to be touching on different parts of relationships, different kinds of relationships. We're going to be talking about our relationships with our family and friends. We're going to be talking about the relationship that we have with ourselves. And tonight we're going to talk about, honestly, a topic I am dreading right now, romantic relationships and what that looks like, how we had romantic relationships in the past and where we are now with them. So first, to kick us off, I want Ben to talk a little bit about his current situation. He'll dive into it a little bit more, but I know that he is currently divorced and has moved in with his new girlfriend. So Ben, how's it been going?
Oh, it's been going wonderful, and I am so excited for this episode because I don't know if I've ever seen you squirm this much. And I hope we can get this on YouTube. Yeah, it's. I think the three of us have an interesting dynamic when it comes to relationships, and mine started. I was married before I went to rehab. Part of the nexus for me going to rehab was my ex-wife, my wife at the time, telling me that she was just flat out unhappy with our marriage, and unfortunately, there was just no saving it. I went to rehab thinking I was going to save it, and found out that was just not the case, and it was a great lesson for me, and that I had to recover for myself and not other things. I had to find that out the hard way, but got out of rehab, went through IOP, and realized that there was no salvaging my marriage, and I had to take a good hard look at what that meant, because I have two daughters that are 10 and 6, and what was the rest of their life going to be like. And so I finally came to that place of acceptance, and IOP, I met my girlfriend, and yes, they say that no big decisions in the first year of recovery. I got divorced, moved into my parents' house, moved out of my parents' house, and started a new relationship and moved in with my girlfriend. So I really am probably not an example for that, but it has been a very interesting situation dating somebody in recovery, but at the same time, it's kind of like it was in when we were in rehab, to be in a room full of people that understood you, as people might come to understand the addict mentality is a different one, and to not have to explain yourself and the weird things that we've done, to not have that shame and guilt, it was really a comforting thing. And so that's how the relationship formed. It's really blossomed into something I couldn't have told you at the beginning that this is what it would have become, but it has, and I'm really just grateful that I'm sober and alive today to be experiencing this at all. So it's been an interesting one, but I know we're gonna bounce this around a little here. So let's hear some of you.
Yeah, I remember in rehab talking to you pretty much every day, if not every hour, about how we're going to fix our marriages. It was, and I think I, at the point, was the very pessimistic one. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, and she won't even talk to me. And I remember that we were allowed like 2 phone calls a week, and I would leave those phone calls just the most anxious person ever.
And angry.
And angry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of anger. I'm sure she had more anger, more fear. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, until recently I also didn't realize that I had to do it for myself. And when I recently realized that is when my marriage started to get better. It took a very long time. This time back from rehab, as most people know, it's my second time. For us to just even be anywhere near the same page. There's a lot of codependency as far as the fear behind the lack of trust. The Even last night, she had a dream that I was using and woke up very upset, drug tested me. So this is still running in her life. Even though I'm months and months clean right now, not saying I have this great amount of time under me, but I've been clean for a while, and she still dreams about me in active addiction. So it definitely has a big toll on our marriage. We're currently seeing a therapist, a Gottman therapist, which is a form of communication. So I'm hoping that'll help. We're both trying very hard, and although it is getting better, we definitely have our ups and downs. So I
Yeah,
am, yeah.
yeah. I just want to touch on what you just said, that she's still affected by it. I dropped my daughters off the other day, and my ex-wife said something, and there is still a level of, like, she does not trust the person that I am, and that takes a long time. You're in a different situation because she gets to see it every day, and I'm not, and that's totally fine. But that trust, I mean, that's, for me, that's where I realized how real it was. It wasn't just like, you know come home, fix everything, and we'll be all good. Like, the damage was done.
Well, it's interesting, there's a concept around how it took us so many years to get to a point where we are
Yeah.
where we were in our addiction. It's going to take an equal amount of time for us to get out of the woods in
Walk
our
into a
recovery.
forest, walk out of a forest.
Exactly. And for our family, our friends, our loved ones, our romantic partners, they don't have the benefit of a program like we do most of the
Yeah.
time. And so it takes them, from my perspective, a lot longer to recover from the damage that we did, because they are not working a program in recovery like we are. And,
Right.
for me, I am not currently dating anyone exclusively. I'm no longer married. I was married. I'm divorced for a little over 2 years now. So I don't have that one person that's there by my side like you guys do, who does get to see you on a daily basis. But that gives me, an advantage of, I get to show up in a relationship now how I am today. I don't have to clean up any type of wreckage unless I really mess it up in the future. But what's it been like to try and work with your significant others as you go through your day-to-day program?
Well, first, I want to applaud you. I thought you were gonna try to turn this to the family episode because you were that worried about the relationship episode. So, and I was almost going to call you out on it, but you pivoted quickly, which was nice.
Pivot.
Um, and you brought up a really good point, that you know the relationship that, with my ex-wife, she would have seen a change. The relationship with my girlfriend now is that she never knew what I was like in active addiction. But the interesting thing about that is that there are a lot of things, a lot of character defaults that I default to, and it's trying to work through those things that I'm now finding that's the hardest part. Is that those things didn't leave me. The need to want to try to fix people, the need to point out your problem, and even if I'm not trying to rub it in your face, I'm not trying to make you feel bad about it, but I'm just trying to let you know, like, hey, here, look, this is what's wrong. Here, this is how you fix it. People just, that be just because I'm in that position doesn't make me right, and doesn't mean that they're in the position to do that either. So when you come into a relationship as somebody in recovery, that's what I found the most interesting. Yeah, I don't drink anymore, and I thought that was going to be the big thing. Like, oh, how am I going to be in a relationship with somebody? Explain to them, oh, I don't drink. Oh, here's why. Well, it goes so much deeper than that. There are things that I did as a person that have been ingrained in me my entire life, that the work still continues to this day. So it's been interesting. I know I keep using that word, but it is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is time. So a couple items with time. So we went to rehab, we went to IOP, we go to meetings. A lot of us have therapists, so we're getting all of this help, this support. We talk to our support networks, and we move forward in this process in our programs or whatever we're doing, and they're stuck back in square one in our active addiction. And like Jason said, it takes them a lot longer to catch up. My therapist today even said, Chris, the I've been with you for 1 hour. You have to realize that she's gone through a trauma, and it's going to take her time to catch up. So I think the biggest thing I'm navigating besides past time is also current. I go to meetings. Until recently, I was in IOP, and that puts a big burden on our significant others. For me personally, we have two children, so pretty much 3 or 4 nights a week, she's home feeding the kids, getting them ready for bed, putting them to bed, and you talk about resentments that can build up if we don't communicate about those. So that is one thing I'm really trying to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of time that I was away from my partner when I was married, I remember this, being a big issue. Not only was I in meetings and I was meeting with my sponsor and I was doing all the things and I was fellowshipping with people, I wasn't around him. One, because he wasn't sober. He doesn't need to be, but two, he was also a trigger for me and would get me that much closer to a drink or a drug, but that really took a toll on my marriage, on my relationship, because I couldn't be around that. And eventually I gave in to his requests of, why are you going to so many meetings? Who is this person that's calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning? And it became this bone of contention, um, where I don't have to deal with that now. Dating and recovery has been very interesting, to say the least. I've dated people in recovery and people who haven't been in recovery, and there's positives and negatives to both. I think we know how crazy we are, and to date another person in recovery, you're just bringing all that baggage with you. But at the same time, they understand, hey, I need to be at a meeting right now. Hey, I need to just be by myself and meditate. Hey, I need to fellowship with people. And there's not that question mark of, well, why aren't you coming home at the time that you said that you were? Who are these people that are calling and texting you? And so that's something that I really see as a benefit of dating someone in the program.
How do you navigate those highs and lows of dating, both high and low, and like always making sure that your recovery comes first? Because that's something that I'd be nervous about is, hey, I broke up with someone, trigger.
Yeah,
Oh, we're in this state of euphoria, trigger, and how do
yeah.
you make sure that your recovery comes first?
That's an excellent question. And honestly, relationships, specifically romantic relationships, were a huge trigger for me. I pour myself into romantic relationships. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So my peaks and valleys are extremely high or extremely low. And just like you said, when things are going well, I'm in this euphoria and I feel like I am invincible. But if I'm in this valley, I feel like the world's going to end. And what I had to do was to really, and we're going to touch on this in a later episode, is but have a relationship with myself. before I could have a relationship with anyone in a romantic sense, because I just couldn't give myself to someone else without giving myself to myself. And now, because I do love myself, because I did the work to get there, I don't tie my recovery to another person, which is what I used to do in the past. I used to tie my recovery, success or failure, to my husband, to my boyfriend, to my, whomever. And now I don't do that. And in fact, I'm not the type of person that says I have to put my recovery above everything else and in front of me and at the focal point of. I don't talk like that. What I do is I weave recovery into every single decision I make. So if I have a date planned for tonight, I check in with myself and I say, can I go on this date? Maybe we're going to a restaurant that I know is going to have a bar. Maybe we're going to go out, in a social setting. You know, I have to check myself and say, am I spiritually fit for this right now? And I have to be honest with myself because I can fake myself out real easy to be like, whoa, yeah, I really want to have this date. But if I'm not there, if I'm not sturdy, if I'm not sound and secure in my recovery in that moment, I choose to either delay it or cancel it because I'm not going to let a date screw up my recovery.
Yeah. And you were able to pivot to the self-love episode too, to avoid talking about the romantic I'm gonna keep pulling you back.
Gosh,
here.
Ben, you just
Way to call him out. That's amazing.
One of the things that both of you were saying, Chris talking about being there, the stress that's put on your wife, and Jason, that idea of being there for somebody in the beginning of a relationship, it really does come back to that bit of individuality. It comes back to yourself, that you have to be able to adapt to work with other people regardless of the situation. And I think that really for me is the biggest thing, is that as an addict I was really selfish. And even even in recovery I'm still selfish, and like you said, Jason, we get to check ourselves. I have to check myself, like I just did there. The whole thing is that I need to be able to work with another human being. And I didn't do that with my ex-wife. And just because I'm not married, I'm still in a relationship. I'm now in a relationship, and I have to be there to work with her. And yeah, one of the things in this new relationship is that they're, even though her, Jason, you said it before, the baggage that you have an addiction, when you start dating somebody else in addiction, they have their own baggage. So trying to work through that, as much healing as I have to do, she has to do. And it's really been about being open and communicating and being honest. And one of the biggest things that I've had to do is admit when I'm wrong, and admit quickly, and not like in a shameful way, like, oh fine, you're right, you got me. In a, and I think for me, when I was in addiction, I knew when I was saying something was wrong. I had an idea of that. What I would never check my motive in addiction, so I would say something to hurt or to manipulate. And even though I'm not trying to do that now, those behaviors are still in me. So when those things happen, I have to check myself immediately and apologize. And it's amazing that how much those things mean, those little tiny things. And yeah, it's we're going out for 7 months, so there's not a ton of healing that needs to happen between her and I, but healing and addiction go hand in hand. And to Chris, as the last man standing of the married trio, what does that healing look like for you?
Yeah, I can't speak directly for her, but one thing that's really helped us is through the last few years, she's learned to separate the disease from the actual person. So, said it yesterday. The person she was like, we were talking about trust and manipulation and all this stuff, and she ended with when you're using. And that was really key in knowing that when I'm using, those are behaviors. When I'm not using, I am present, I am trustworthy. I do have character defaults, as Ben says, and like you, we are trying to build trust. Trust is the probably longest item to heal, as far as you need to prove through your actions. I mean, I could say sorry, I can say I'm going to do XYZ, but it's going to take time. Um, and for us, I think we just both have to be patient and set our realistic expectations. And that's kind of what we have. We're not trying to rush things, and that's really helping, because previously we always tried to rush to the end point. We always tried to say, all right, we're going to fix, and we are being fluid right now. So it's not perfect, um, but it's getting better. And we are there for each other. We support each other. We do love each other, but it's going to take time. And, like Jason was talking about, we walk a mile into the forest, you got to walk a mile out. So I'm trying each day to remind myself that I need to be patient, as it took 6, 7 years to get to this point. I'm not saying it's going to take 6, 7 years to get out, but it could. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at.
And you were talking about walking the talk. I can't tell you how many times, a partner, or now my ex-husband, used to say to me, actions speak louder than words, because this alcoholic and addict loves to talk, and I can talk my way into and out of any situation. But when I had to put my feet on the ground and actually show up, I wasn't able to. I always used alcohol and drugs to hide and mask and retreat from situations. That's why, honestly, this episode is um, so hard for me, because I I'm uncomfortable. I feel as though romantic relationships is one of the areas in my life that I have the least amount of control over and the biggest lack of power in. And it's been really, really hard to manage. At the same time, really freeing, because I remember talking to my therapist about this. I was serial dating, for lack of a better term, when I got out of rehab, and I got to a point in my recovery that I was uh, able to start having romantic relationships with people, and I was going on dates with about 5, 6 people, and nothing was really getting serious until it started to with someone. And I remember telling my therapist, I was like, I don't understand how to do this. I like this one person because he has this and everything that I'm looking for, but I don't know how to let the other people down. And she looked at me and she said, "Wow, that's fantastic. You are making decisions for a healthy relationship. You're being more um, particular. You're taking those actions, because previously, what I would do is I would get into a relationship, and if it was successful, it was successful until it wasn't, or if it wasn't, I would stick with it and sabotage it from the inside until the other person left me. And now I am able to stick up for myself and run my own program, even if I am dating someone in the program. And that's actually a question that I have for you, Ben, is what's that like for you, dating someone who's trying to run their own program, and you and your swim lane, her and hers, not trying to bump into each other. What's that like for you?
That is a great question. I'm going to respond to it in 1 second. Our producer Matrix put in the chat, when you guys were talking about walk into the forest and walk out. He asked, can you run out of the forest? For me, I ran into that forest, and so it's going to take me
Being
forever
dragged
to
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
we're crawling out.
yeah, I'm in the middle of the. I have no idea where I am. Um,
By the way, he's typing that while he's downing some vegetable pizza.
looks good though. Jason, when you were talking, I wrote down lack of control, and you know that's what it is. When you're, it's not any different in terms of I can only control what I can. I can't control. I couldn't control what my ex-wife was going to do when I got out of rehab. Chris can't control what his wife is going to do. I can't control what my girlfriend's going to do, and that goes to that's throughout her program. It is something I've learned that you know, and then when I've been in meetings or it's been I've seen couples and you hear about people meeting and getting married and all this stuff. And one thing I noticed is that they don't really do a lot of meetings together. And that's because your recovery just has to stay separate. It just has to. And it's not because like it has if it did work together, that'd be great. Like if you both like the same meetings, that'd be terrific. But we just don't like the same type of meetings. I enjoy a 7:15 every daily meeting. That's not her particular flavor, and that's fine. And but in terms of staying in our particular lanes, it's that lack of control, and I have to just be okay with that, whatever that looks like. However long she speaks with anybody in her network, how often she attends a meeting, all of these things, I can't control any part of it. But what I can do is I can support her. And that's where I've found that I've had to walk this fine line as somebody in recovery and as somebody in a relationship who's supporting a significant other. They, and the somebody as a significant supporting your significant other shouldn't matter if they're in recovery. That's the thing that led me to being, once divorced. I did not support my significant other. It's that for me is the main flaw in my one of the main flaws in my character, my self-centeredness. So just being able to experience that every day, it helps. And I don't know if it makes sense that it helps, but being forced to give up that attempt to control has been a really freeing experience because I just can't do it for her. I can't recover for you guys. It's just that's not the way this works. So it was definitely challenging for sure, but like I found in recovery, every challenge has been a learning lesson.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the hardest thing that I have is, you talk about support. Well, my wife would, she always asks, she's like, I want your support by just listening. And I'm like you, I mean, and Jason, we used to, or I used to, but I know you guys have talked about it, want to fix everything. Like you said, Ben, you point out, okay, well, this is wrong, and these are your three options, are, this is the streamlined direction to the endpoint, and I think you should do this. And sometimes people just want to be heard and validated. And I have a really hard time, I'm an engineer, so I deal with numbers. So I'm very analytical, and that gets in the way of my relationship a lot. And, you talk about control. And when I got home, I wanted to fix everything. And you're right. I could not control how my wife reacted, how my family reacted, how the people around me reacted. And accepting that was, once I accepted that, it was very freeing, and it helped me in my recovery process.
One thing that keeps echoing in my head is something that I hear in the rooms of recovery is that when I'm out there and I am active in my addiction, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have a spouse, I don't have a partner. I take a hostage. And that imagery is so accurate for what I used to do to people. And, there's one individual that I can think of right off the top of my head, that I just dragged through my addiction. And we just recently got reconnected, and it's cordial. But what I did was just try and try and try and try and try to be with this person. And they kept telling me, "You're not well enough to be with me." And that was so offensive. That was so offensive because I had the job, I had the money, I had the car, I had the family, I had the stuff, but I didn't have sobriety. And that is the differentiator in my life today.
If I don't know the person you're speaking about, but if it was the individual around the time you were in rehab, I remember going through this with you, and it reminded me of going through my own relationship issues with you and with you, Chris. The when I received like Chris, you were
Oh
talking
yeah,
about the phone calls.
I
Oh, those
remember
were
this.
the worst. You know, it was I went and Jason, I cried on your bed. I sat there and cried on your bed before we went out to the smoke hut. Like that, it's amazing. And that's not something that I've thought about a lot in these last couple of weeks and months, but it really does make me appreciate our relationship and where the three of us have come from, and being there for each other then and now. That was, I mean, those phone calls were, oh, I mean, when you talk about trying to make it a day at a time, I didn't know how I was going to make
Yeah.
it through at 10 from 10 o'clock to 10:50, before the next smoke break, waiting for, one of the RCs to get through a lecture. Like that was awful.
I feel like you kind of deep down miss those smoke huts. Like you do bring them up a lot.
Not deep down, not deep down. It's right on the surface.
It's funny because I think I was literally the only person that didn't smoke.
Yeah.
You
in
came out there
rehab.
like 2 or 3 times and you were like, "I can't do this."
Yeah, I would just go out there and stand like 10 feet away and like be like, I want to be part of this. I have FOMA.
Oh, and Matrix, you weren't out there either, were you?
Oh yeah, Matrix was quitting at that time.
Yep, at that time. But Ben, just for point of clarification, no, it was actually a different person. But I do remember that really well. And what you just sparked up for me is how good I am at giving other people relationship advice without actually taking it myself.
It's amazing to see you talk about issues in relationships, because I like was leaning on you so hard, and like I still remember that particular phone call, and we sat down and you were just like, "Is anybody dead? Did anybody do anything that's going to cost $1 million?" And no, okay. And at the time, I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" Like, and it's just like, having never been through it before, I didn't understand the whole premise of like, we can't fix this right now. And it's this is going to be a bad analogy. I wish I could go back to high school. I wish I could go back to high school and knowing all the things that I know now, because I would kill it in high school.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that a Rod
Yeah.
Stewart song?
It might be, yeah. But if I went back to rehab now, I would know all the things that I'm supposed to know. But the whole point is that I'm not supposed to go back to rehab.
The fact that
Right.
the fact that Jason has such good advice, even though, you say that one aspect or that actual aspect of your life isn't at the top of your, hey, I have this under control. That just speaks so loudly to talking about your issues and recovery. I mean, we could build things up in our head so easily and spin out of control and just ruminate on them and, think over and over. And we could be all over the place. And then we say it out loud, and 3 people will be like, well, this is pretty simple. Like you
Right.
said, did anyone die? Is your house burned down? Can you eat tonight? And it just puts everything into perspective very fast. So it's just crazy when you talk about things with people how clear the answer is.
Yeah, and I think that, even though there's no hard and fast rule about this, the idea of not getting into or making any big decisions is probably sound advice. One that I kind of took and I kind of didn't because I was still very willful. But like Ben said, if I could go back knowing what I know now, man, my life would look a lot different. But that's growth, like you were saying, Ben.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the things you hear in recovery. No big decisions in the first year. Don't get into a relationship in the first year. When I spoke to my sponsor about it, he was very frank about it and said, look, I'm not a guy that's going to tell you on day 364 that you can't do something, and day 366 you can. It's a paraphrase, but the premise was that and one of the other things that he's done is that he's made sure that I've not shielded myself from alcohol, because he's very big on life is going to happen. You have to check your motives. And that was really the key for me. Once I kind of spoke to him and said, okay, I have to check my motives here. And I made sure that she understood where I was in my recovery. And then for me, I was going to move forward in the relationship. At the same time, my recovery could not be compromised, and that still holds true to this day. But I think as a just a blanket rule, those things do. I see why they make sense now. They make sense because there is so much to navigate, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And so by adding a relationship on top of it, like you said, whether it's in a person in recovery or not, they will have baggage. We've dated normal people. They had baggage. Like that's baggage. When taking on somebody else's thing it's a lot to ask. And I found in my recovery there was a whole mess of crap of my own that I had to go through. So it's also something that I'm glad that I did it, and I don't. There's no part of me that regrets it, or I would not do it any differently, because it wasn't supposed to happen any differently for me. This was exactly what was supposed to happen, and I'm good with that. So it's been I'm not going to say interesting again, but I just said it's interesting again.
It's been a journey. It's been an interesting journey. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we could go on for the rest of the evening talking about relationships, specifically the romantic ones that we've had or haven't had in our lives.
Not if you had your way.
Yeah, not if we had. In fact, that's it for us tonight, boys. My favorite part of the evening has come. Thank you so much for being so open, honest, and vulnerable tonight. I was talking to myself, Ben, and But no, seriously, thank you so much. And for the individuals that you are with now, they are very lucky people. I'm very lucky to have you all in my life. So as always, tonight's episode is dedicated for the still sick and suffering alcoholic and addict, especially the individual who's going to pick up for the first time tonight. Have a great night, guys.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
We appreciate your liking and subscribing to our podcast. If you liked what you heard today and would like to support our podcast, feel free to Venmo $1 to our virtual basket at Sober Solutions Podcast. We want to hear from you too. If you have a comment, question, topic, or would like to come on the show, find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Sober Solutions Podcast. Or you can shoot us an email to sobersolutionspodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And if you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show.